hopefully interpret this correctly. But this notion of we are moving into uncertainty, but how do we talk about it? We are moving into increased likelihood of disasters. How do we respond to that? And the easy thing was always give us more money. It's not a new idea to have greater demand than the amount of resources available. Every civilization has had that. We have it too. Not a new idea. But it's a completely different thing to talk about. How do we deal with decisions for future generations? And one of the comments that we were making in the car coming up, when I told the story about Jonathan's phone call, was it's easy for us within local government at the administrative level to go, that's a fabulous thing. That's not necessarily the case for the residents. I know when I had a call from Hawkesbury at the Joining Council when they got hit really badly, can we send a few crews? And I spoke to Nicole and said, can we do this? I rang Rosemary and she said, yes, of course. But we have to be, our residents aren't necessarily aligned with that, but they would be aligned, I would suggest, with this idea of future generations. So it's a problem that is almost unimaginable to deal with fire and flood at the same time. But that is our present reality. If I had said to you or someone had said to me 5 years ago, you're going to see 5 natural disasters in 4 years, I said, get right. What's the impact of that? I can tell you as a civil engineer, I did hydrology at uni and I've done lots of hydrology work. All of the rules are gone. All of the pipe design, all of our stormwater drainage design were based on ideas that were historically based on rainfall intensity, storm frequency and duration. There's a thing called Australian rainfall and runoff. We built a whole science around it. It's gone. It is no longer relevant. We don't know. We don't know. Planning for the bushfire conference that we hosted, we pulled together a panel of those who were expert in fire management from all different aspects, from both building construction, from the emergency response. And I said to them, how can we talk about how to respond in a major fire? And half of that panel of 6 said, you can't. So what do you mean? It's so big that we can't. There is no effective response. Okay. So part of this dilemma is how do we plan for this? Now, I'll tell you 2 parallel stories. When I was in New Zealand, when Jonathan rang me, I just travelled from Franz Joseph to Fox Glacier along the west coast. 2 hours after I drove through that, the road was gone. The highway was gone. Now, what was impressive to me was 24 hours later, the highway was back up. And I spoke to some people there. I said, how do you do that? And they said, we're ready. We're ready. We expected this would happen. So part of this speaking out for future generations is say we expect that we can make decisions for future generations. We expect that 3 levels of government could work together to plan for this. Some would say that's a lie. Yep. But I'm going to boldly state it. Because the alternative is, what do we tell our kids? So I looked at that. The one, that's March 2021. And the Gazette proudly said Blue Mountains is back in business. And everyone went, that's good. In March 2022, it happened again. By this time, the residents are getting grumpy. And they're going, why hasn't council fixed it? Why didn't you stop this from happening? And this is April 2024. I've just got to say that those of you that are into any kind of geology, one of the things you will notice is there ain't nowhere to build a wall on. Right? Now, I said New Zealand got it back in 24 hours. They did have a rock shelf that was about 3 meters down, so they could actually build something up. Megalong, there's nothing down there. So you've got to pin something to the side of the rock face. Our dilemma is, I say ours, not just Blue Mountains. Make sure what I'm up to. I'll do this. That's the data. Each of those arrows were the 4 natural disasters. Don't worry about the detail, but what you'll see, the bars are, the top is landslides, the bottom is roads, how much damage there is, and the message is it's cumulative. Each event weakens poor infrastructure so that the next event gets worse. And the scale of the numbers is unachievable for local government. Now I say local government. Why? If you're in a council that is in the metro areas, most of the infrastructure has reasonably adequate stormwater drainage and reasonably adequate pavement streets. I spent a whole bunch of years in Penrith a long time ago. During the rapid growth of Penrith, and there were engineering plans for everything that was built. Stormwater, roads. By and large, they haven't had too much trouble from this stuff. Rural councils, not just New South Wales, rural councils across Australia, particularly in areas that have a lot of hills or mountains, look at the history of infrastructure. Engineering plans, forget about it. We had dirt tracks where the bullock carts used to go, and unless you had a convict road, and they were built well, except they were windy because they were built for horse and cart, we just got a big old bulldozer with roads, drainage, got to put hot in there, done. Not surprisingly, as soon as you get heavy rain, that happens. Our dilemma is that currently within government and our 3 levels of government, most of the revenue goes to federal, then gets passed through to states, a little bit trickles to local government, and then local government has land tax or rates. No one has ever done the numbers on what does it cost to run a council. No one's ever done it. No one has ever done the numbers on how much money should be transferred from federal through to state to local. No one's done it. They accidentally, historically say, here's a bucket of money, then they have a formula for distributing, but no one actually said how much did the bucket need to be. So we were already having trouble. I mean, we local government, particularly regional, were already having really serious problems just trying to balance the books. So when we started putting our asset management plans in the last 40 years, all of a sudden these numbers pop out that said, hang on a minute, you can't afford all the stuff you've got. Yes, what is it when most of that stuff is roads and drains that people need to get to their house? And over the last 10 to 15 years, probably 20, state governments said, we know how to fix that. Amalgamate. If I have 2 shops and they're both going broke, and I join the 2 shops together and spend a whole bunch of money refitting the 2 shops into one shop, how is that going to help? And the most recent was New South Wales, and I think it's now on the public record, it didn't work. Cost a lot of money, but didn't work. So what else have we got? So, Stu, when you talk about a complete revisit of systems, our opportunity is we've got to actually revisit the systems of revenue allocation across 3 levels of government. That is our challenge. How do we do that? We don't do it as Blue Mountains Council. Blue Mountains and Lithgow, better, not enough. What if all the rural regional councils across Australia said, we can't afford this, this is not going to work? And that's what we did in the last 40 years. And that's what we've got to do for the next 40. We've got the media. That fades pretty quickly. One of the things is there's a project going on with Institution of Public Works Engineering Australasia, and that's what I call an advocacy project. And it's the lessons learned from the natural disasters. We started this before April, and really the intent of that was to produce some numbers. Now, what are the numbers? What's missing from our asset management plans and strategies that New South Wales State Government actually pointed out that one of the really important missing things in all the state government infrastructure entities was none of them talked about the impact of climate change on infrastructure. It was a major recommendation. If we looked at Blue Mountains and we had some numbers about what proportion of our infrastructure was not fit for future and at risk of falling apart, and Lithgow did the same, and so on and so forth, that would be like having an asset register the first time. Because we don't have it. Do you have it? They don't have it. I've asked lots of councils. None of them have it. If you ask the council, do you know what proportion of infrastructure is fragile and will fall to bits on a major disaster? They can't tell you. That seems a little bit important right now. 5 years ago, it was never happens. It's so unlikely we don't even want. We're there. We start combining those numbers, all of a sudden we've got something to talk about in terms of advocacy. While I was in New Zealand, and I did pass that phone call on to Nicole, Nicole's just worked 12 hours a day for about 12 days straight with pneumonia. Had a bit of a cough, I think, go to the doctor. You got pneumonia. Due to the team effort, and I think this isn't just us, this is what every rural regional council faces in Australia. Where the resourcing is inadequate, the people who are there have to do the best they can on top of everything else. And last Friday we got one lane back open. Let's get Nicole to talk a bit about that story.
Agencies in asking assistance from Transport for New South Wales Reconstruction Authority, New South Wales Public Works, state MPs, local MPs, getting them all levels of government and getting them all in a room and just asking for assistance and cutting through basically the red tape of the guideline process that we normally have to adhere to. Having a community cut off and having to go through the current natural disaster funding guidelines, that operating model doesn't work for a situation like this when you've got a community cut off. It was a matter of quickly reaching certain key contacts and getting them all together and how we can fix this and how we can get the community some sort of access. We've still got a lot of works to go. We're still progressing to immediate reconstruction works, but without working with other agencies and all levels of government, the operating model needs to change. We need to implement better engineering solutions so that we're not putting infrastructure back in place that's not fit for purpose, that is climate resistant. We don't want to do like for like. If we did like for like again, this would happen again and again and again, which is also a waste of money from all levels of government. So there definitely needs to be a change for the guidelines and building better infrastructure. Okay, any questions? I'll bring back over to Jeff.
So next steps becomes a challenge. And like all of these major challenges, there's never enough time, there's never enough resources. Penny, you called them enthusiasts. I would say that they were people that had a passion to make a difference, even though it was difficult. I think what you've seen is a way of going about doing that. And it leads us to the next step, which is the decision making. Probably our biggest both strength and challenge is, for reasons that I totally understand, the community doesn't get it. The stuff I've talked about here, the funding between three levels of government. Community doesn't get that. Why hasn't council fixed it yet? Right? And we are facing, and I think other councils hopefully not, but could face legal challenges, both from individuals and groups. Council hasn't fixed my problem yet. Now, I've got to say, in the light of talking about communities don't get it, in the light of that, there are still people who say, Council, I'm going to take you for court because I've got some water running through my backyard. And I've been complaining about for 20 years and you haven't fixed it yet. I'm taking you to court for nuisance. Am I blaming that? No. But part of this is being able to communicate some of these messages in terms that we can understand to the broader community. And that's where this idea of using asset management planning as a communication tool for the next 40 years kicks in. Because one of the things we did in the last 40 years, especially in the last 10 to 15, was with asset management plans, we could go to community and say community, and we did that at Blue Mountains. And I know other councils have done it. We went to community and said, community, we've got $1 billion worth of infrastructure, it costs this much to maintain, renew and do the things we need to do. And guess what? Our revenue is way below what we need. Now we have a choice. At Blue Mountains, we said, we can't afford 5 pools. We can't afford 5 libraries. Community, what do you want? We can wind back on libraries and pools. We can wind back on some of the things that we have that we like, or we can increase revenues. And to the surprise of many people, the majority of the community said, we'd rather increase revenues. Now, I've got to say very quickly, I don't think that's the answer. Why do I not think that's the answer? I think that's not the answer because there is sufficient money across 3 levels of government. And if we don't handle that across 3 levels of government, because the numbers associated with natural disasters is orders of magnitude bigger than, Rosemary, what we were talking about in 2015, 2016. Currently, Nicole can spend $500,000 on emergency funding and then all of the requirements on procurement kick back in. We'll go through $2 million on stuff like this in a month. But our procurement rules take us three months to get a contractor on board. So our structures, our disaster recovery guidelines, our funding arrangements across 3 levels of government are all lagging behind what is now 5 natural disasters. All of the rules and the regulations, the funding arrangement we are working to are based on law set before any of this happened, as though it never happened. So this advocacy project is going to be really important. But the challenge is going to be for individual councils to say, make an initial estimate. How much of our infrastructure, I'll just make something up, a fit for future level 1. It's okay. It's secure. I'll take out the other end, level 3. almost certain that it will fail at this kind of cost. I did an estimate for Megalong, the windy road going down. I did a quick calc, 200 million. So far, we did 64 million. This is another one. I think it's about right. So what am I saying? What proportion of our infrastructure is level 3? Blue Mountains, I think it's around 300 million, mate. Lithgow, probably more. Some of your stuff is more difficult than ours. I know Northern New South Wales councils, harder. It's even more than that. So that's the thing that we've got to do next, is starting to advocate at that kind of level. Because the answer is not what state governments have done. Oh, well, we'll pretend a council is an autonomous business unit and you could just raise enough local tax to deal with it. It wasn't true before the natural disasters, and it certainly isn't true now.